and it was a beautiful story. It was so well done. Bill Simmons really did a great job.
I love Bill.
Jason Aaron.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Did a great job. But so it was your normal, but were you aware, it had to become a point where you knew this wasn't normal, right? Was there a point where, I assume you're going to some shows, you're around the talent from time to time. Was there a point where you went, hey, this is not like every other kid's at my school's life? I don't know. Was there a point where you realized that?
You know, I suppose. I don't know that there's ever one moment. Kids in school, they would always ask me questions about wrestling. And, I was either kids loved me or they hated me.
Really?
WWE's always been very polarizing.
Yeah.
Just because of who my father was. And it's actually interesting because I used to feel really bad about that. And I'd say to my dad, like, I want people to like me for me.
Yeah.
And some people don't like me without ever knowing me. And my dad always told me, you know what, Steph, not everybody's gonna like you. And as long as you're a good person and you can look yourself in the eyes in the mirror and know that you're a good person, that's all that matters.
Was your dad a big influence on you? This is great because I think a lot of the fans of WWE only see the character version of you, right? Which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that. But it's interesting. I think it's a great peek inside just what's turned you into this force you are in business too, right? So what kind of influence was your dad? Your dad is this larger than life figure, obviously, right? He's a hero of mine for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which is, I'm serious, is your dad's fitness level at his age. It's something that I aspire to.
He's 72.
So, I know, it's amazing. And he's a stud, right? At least from not knowing him on the outside, I look at him as like, that's what you want. He's got business. He's got a great family. He's been married to the same woman. He's super fit. He's went from rags to riches. But for you, how did your dad have an influence over you when you were growing up?
It's funny because I actually talk about my dad all the time and the influence that he had on my life, to the point where some people say, well, what about your mom?
Yeah.
Because my mom is a force of nature in her own right.
Yes.
But I idolized my dad, growing up for sure. And, well into my adult life, I just absolutely idolized my dad. And he's my dad. And I don't know if you have a daughter, right?
Yes.
That dad-daughter connection, there is just something so special about it. And just to tell a personal story, he now has, because we have 3 girls, as you mentioned, we do this daddy-daughter dance every year. And because of how close in age my kids are, there's always 2 going to the same dance. And my dad comes and he'll take the daughter that my husband's not going with.
Oh my gosh.
And there's this beautiful song that they played, that they play all the time. Actually, I recommend people look it up. It'll make you cry, about Dancing with Cinderella. And he dances with my little girls, and he has those moments with them that they will never forget.
Oh my gosh.
And to me, that's what it's all about,
That is what it's all about. I'm really glad you shared that with me. I don't know why that gets me emotional.
Because you're thinking about your little girl, probably.
Do. Yeah, I do. Wow, that's a great story. And so you're like helping lead into all these questions I have, because I think our past sort of gives us some future, prediction of where we're going. And you come from this, you mentioned your mom, you actually come from, at least that I'm aware of, 3 generations of super hardworking women. Like
that's right.
Your grandmother was a working woman in the 40s when that was not the norm.
Not just a working woman, she was a budget analyst for the Navy.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
And she had to prove herself in that role. And I asked her one day, I said, how did you do that, Mima? We call her Mima, M-I-M-A.
Okay.
And that's my brother named her when he couldn't pronounce grandmother, so it became Mima, and she's still Mima to me. And she said, well, I just learned how to do what my boss did, and I did it better than they did.
Wow, that's
so
awesome.
She had all the answers.
She was. I've watched some of your social stuff. Like, she was a real influence in your life too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, my grandmother. I love my grandmother. She's so strong. You talk about strong. She has no filter. She'll say anything to anybody. And it can come off rude to some people. Like we've been out to dinner before, and she'll say something, and to the waiter waitress, I'm like,
you're explaining her. Isn't that kind of interesting for all of you guys that see her character to know that she's the one explaining away the intense behavior? I think that's pretty cool. So you got, I'm loving this. So there's grandma, who didn't just work but did something very substantial. And then your mother, even when your mom started building the company with your dad, your mom, that was not necessarily the norm in the early 80s for women to be working to that extent outside the home all the time too. And so you've really followed in mom and grandma's footsteps now into this role that you're in now. Was there a point where you knew, I'm going to step into this business?
So, two things I want to say on that. Yeah. One is, I think it's so important for girls today to see women in leadership positions, whether it's in business, media, sports, entertainment, because then they know that they could do that if they wanted to. And oftentimes you don't necessarily think of something that you can do if you don't see someone else doing it. And I think because of my grandmother and because my mom was the CEO of WWE, it never occurred to me that I couldn't, be a leader.
Yes.
I assumed actually that that's what I was supposed to do.
Wow.
Right? Okay. So it was quite the opposite, just because my mom was in that position. And in terms of working for the company, I've always wanted to be a part of the business.
You did?
Always. I have watched since I can remember. And that's where, you mentioned as a little kid, right? I just thought everyone's dad was on TV. This wasn't the case.
Right.
But I just grew up loving our business. And the other thing is, because my parents were building our company, my dad took it from a regional business into a global phenomenon.
Yes.
And dinner conversations were always about business.
I'm sure.
Right? So I was always listening to them, always listening to them talk about business. And we didn't have nannies or anything like that, so I was always with them.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, Saturday mornings I'd go with them to the office.
No kidding.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'd sit with the receptionist most of the time. I'd draw pictures. My mom still has this framed picture of a dog that I drew in the art department. And I named it Scruffy. And she framed it, and to this day has it in her
So it was
office.
sort of like, there was going to be this path. You were going to end up here probably, right?
Yeah, but I didn't, the funny thing is I didn't picture myself in any particular role.
Okay.
I didn't say, oh, I'm going to be on TV, or oh, I'm going to, do this or do that. I just wanted to be a part of it.
Wow.
And I think part of the reason why is because to me it was a way to give back to my family. I wanted to be a part of what they loved so much and what they were growing and what they were doing. I wanted to be a part of it. And I loved it too.
Yeah.
So we share this passion for this business.
Yeah. You have to forgive me on something. I really watch people when they talk.
Right.
And your face changes every time you talk about your family.
Yeah?
Yeah, it does. Like, there's a deep love in your family that I sense, and it's on your face even now. Like, when I talk to you, I don't know why that affects me when I see it on people, because I love mine so much too.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the secrets of WWE. And because we have mutual friends, Kristen and other people, and so I'm familiar with the company. It's this really interesting thing. I think people see this.
When you say Kristen, you mean Kristen Prouty?
I do.
Okay, I'm just
Kristen
getting
Prouty.
her name out.
Let's give her the shout out.
Okay.
She might be in the room right now.
She might be. She might be sitting right there,
she might be right
behind
there,
the camera.
But she doesn't want to be in front of the camera. But yes.
And JJ, I have to say, because she's also sitting right there.
She's coming up to the lake this summer. You know that she's never been in a lake, just so you know, in her life.
Ever?
So she's going to jump in my lake this summer. It's actually not my lake, but it's in front of my house, so I call it my lake. So she's coming there. But you can see even in the environment in the room, everybody. And so one of the things I've learned about WWE is that although it's became this publicly traded thing, it's this big, huge entity, it really is a family business, and there's a family environment in the business too. And I think for all of you fans that are watching this, this has to be so insightful for you, but I love great American business stories. And so what you said about being a prominent woman, it's why I do the show. I want more young business women to see people like you and to know she's not in the number 27 position in the company. This is a woman helping drive this company. She'll be humble about what she does, but she's helping drive this company. This is one of the most front and center. She's a character on the show. She's the branding officer. She's this kind of global ambassador for the entire organization. And so, but the seeds of the company, I think, tell you a lot. I was reading about your mom and dad, and when your mom was pregnant with you, your parents were broke. They were BK.
They declared bankruptcy.
They declared bankruptcy.
So this is actually a great story. Okay. My mom is 8 months pregnant with me, and she was on her way to go meet my dad at the courthouse. And she walks out of the house, and there's a boot on her car for unpaid parking tickets or whatever it was, because they really just had no money. And the tow truck comes to get the car, and my mom said, can I please ask you to just drop me off?
8 months pregnant.
We need to declare bankruptcy. Would you mind?
Oh my gosh.
So this tow truck driver was really nice and drives down. So now can you imagine my dad, who's now mad because she's late, right? And then up drives this big tow truck, and my mom with her big belly waddles out of the tow truck. You know, like, can you imagine?
No, I cannot imagine.
And they had my brother, you know, who was about 6.
Oh my gosh.
So.
And when you see this, you watch the different TV shows, you see the big stars, you see The Rock and his movies, and to think that it came from a time, just for those of you that, I want hope, because there's entrepreneurs out there.
Sure.
And they're thinking, you know, I'm close to BK, I'm broke, I've got these family issues. Picture this 8-month pregnant mother of hers, right? Picture this. She's going to the courthouse to file bankruptcy, and it turns into what you see today with all of these offshoots, this global brand. It's this, and it's got the feeling still and vibe. In other words, as this is another key for businesses that have grown. As it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, they've worked very hard to maintain its culture. Because as companies get bigger, as brands get bigger, so speak to that just for a second from a branding perspective too, and how focused you are on the culture of the company, not just the inner workings, the show, the talent, all that, but just the culture. It's
incredibly important.
So what do you do to do that, and how do you stay focused on it?
So a few different things. One, I'll talk about, you know, the notion of family and that culture as it relates to our audience, and then I'll talk to it as it relates to, you know, our talent.
Yeah.
But as it relates to our audience, we actually call our audience the WWE universe, right? And they are fans, but fans seems to be an exclusive term, whereas the universe is inclusive. And I've taken that term even more broadly because I think it's not just our fan base. I think it's also our talent. I think it's also our employees. I think it's anybody who loves or touches our brand, our business partners, anybody who's a part of WWE is a part of the WWE universe. And you can feel it when you come to a show. I did a few interviews to talk about WrestleMania this past year where I wrestled Ronda Rousey, by the way.
We're going to talk
she
about
won.
That.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's, I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of.
Yeah, no. I'm just hamming it up. But it was such an incredible opportunity. It was amazing. But what I talked about is why WrestleMania is so important to me and what it means to me, because that is where everyone comes together to share this passion.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so unique. And so, for example, this past Monday, we announced our partnership with Special Olympics in support of the USA Games. And our entire audience got to their feet when these athletes came out. It was Team Texas, because that's who they are.
Yeah.
You know, and it is this inclusive, supportive, amazing environment. I mean, in spite of what you may read on Twitter as it relates to storyline, you know, they really are this amazing group of people. And I believe in humanity, I really do. But that's the family environment, you know, and that's what WWE is. So from a branding perspective, even calling them the WWE Universe, making sure they feel included, giving them the opportunity to have that standing ovation for those athletes, because how does that feel to them? Well, you feel good when you support somebody else, right?
No question,
It's a gift to be able to be there for someone else. It is.
That's wonderful.
And from a talent standpoint, my husband has taken great care actually to cultivate this culture even in our performance center where we're developing future stars. You know, it's all about professionalism. You know, the way you dress, you shake people's hands, you look them in the eye, you pick up trash, you know, you support one another. He's looking for emergent leaders. You know, he's looking in talent tryouts, you know, not just are you going to make it physically, right? But then once you're really worn down, who are the ones who are in it for themselves and who are the ones that try to pick other people up?
Really? Yes.
You know,
that's
so
part of the culture inside the company.
Part of the culture grown from the very beginning.
I wonder, because you grew up around it, that you just have this maybe unique respect and admiration for. It's almost like in WWE there aren't really, you're right about the fan thing. The more that you said, I was thinking about, it's almost like we're all in on this together.
That's right.
It's kind of, even on the storyline stuff too, it's like we're super entertained by it, we kind of both know what's happening, yet we buy in and love it so much too. So it really, that is unique, and I never thought about it that way.
And if you ever come to a show, anybody, whoever comes to a show, and you ask a question to anyone sitting around you, like, so who's this guy or who's that girl? You will suddenly 5 people will turn around and give you like the full background of the whole storyline from their beginning.
Yeah, that's totally true.
You know, because we want you to be a part of this.
Yeah, is there something about someone watching this who's, because there's the raving fans that are watching this and they're going, wow, I'm so excited and inspired to hear this side of you. But then there's people that are watching this that know of WWE, but may not know much about it either, right? And so, what is WWE? Like, let's not assume everybody knows that. Like, what would you say WWE is? What?
So, well, WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. For those of you who really don't know, you might not even know the acronym. But it's like a live action adventure soap opera. And when I'm out there and I'm speaking to influencers, brands, potential partners, and I need to give a little bit of an education and an overview, I say we're really no different than a great opera, ballet, play, TV show, sitcom, movie. It's protagonist versus antagonist with conflict resolution.
Right.
Only our conflicts are settled inside a 20 by 20 foot ring with some of the greatest live action that you can see anywhere in any sport or entertainment. That's how I talk about WWE.
It is, but some of and if I would add, even though I know 1%, 1 millionth of 1% what you do, some of the greatest athletes I've ever seen in my life.
They're amazing.
The combination of, it's interesting, WWE's got these, that's why I love it, it's got this combination of all of these different elements to it, and even the characters themselves, they're great athletes, they've got to be able to perform, they've got to be able to inspire, they've got to have quick 1 minute things they say, they got to do it in a ring in front of a live audience, it's also got to translate through a camera. It's really unbelievable, some of the talent and the way that you create it.
It's actually really interesting. I just heard Jodie Foster say about wrestling how it's a great foundation for anybody who wants to perform in film. She was talking about Hotel Artemis, which is her new movie coming out. And Batista's in it.
I saw that. Okay.
Am I saying that correctly? Yeah, okay, great. I'm just making sure.
Get it right. Right.
And it's going to be, if you want to watch the video, it's going to be on our .com site. I'll get the plug in there. But it was really interesting to hear her say it unprompted, about how it really gives you all of the tools you need to be successful in any genre, really.
Right.
And when you think about it, if you ever hear Rock or John Cena, who now have transcended, what we do, you hear them talk about those tools, right? Because think about public speaking, right? You're speaking in front of thousands of people all the time, right? So you get your chops, from doing that. You need to show up on time. You have to be professional in WWE or you're not going to make it, right? If you have lines, they're memorized. You come prepared. Plus, you have been doing interviews and media interviews even from the time that you're a developmental talent, because we're training you constantly in all different platforms and all different avenues. We're training you to build your brand in social media. We're training you to do other types of media interviews, radio, TV, etc. We're training you at the local level, and then we're training you at the national level, and then the global level.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So it's when you are a WWE superstar, you are one of the most well-rounded business people and entertainers and athletes that you could possibly be.
It's so true, and they love it. You hear Dwayne talk about the WWE. He still has a heart for it. He still loves it. Or John, the Bella twins on my show.
Yeah, the Bellas as well.
They just love it. And what you said is really, they exemplify that too. They're just really unbelievable women. They're great business women. They're great branding women, and they love this, right? They have a heart for it. There's this passion for it. And that kind of leads me down a road I want to talk about, because we didn't just feature a woman on the show just because she's so successful, but also you've helped, you may not take credit for it, but when I used to watch wrestling, it was a totally male-dominated enterprise, right? And I gotta believe that you had something to do with this transition the last, call it decade or so, where frankly, some of the most well-known people are the Bellas, are the female talent, are Ronda Rousey. So did you consciously start to take the company in that direction, or did that just sort of the market dictated it?
I've been a part of it.
Okay.
So definitely I've had a voice, for a long time, and not just by myself, there's been a lot of other voices, right? A lot of other female voices trying to fight for this, and some male voices as well. But it wasn't until our fans spoke that we were able to truly affect the change.
You mean speak with ratings like we like this?
Social media. So there was a match with the Bellas, with actually Nikki Bella, and it lasted all of 30 seconds. Okay. And unfortunately, that was the norm, right? And this was in 2015. Okay. It was supposed to be a tag match for 30 seconds. And our fans had just had enough, and they started a hashtag called Give Divas a Chance. And it trended worldwide for 3 days.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Specifically asking for more athleticism, longer matches, better character development, better storylines, specifically demanding those things. And my father, the chairman and CEO, responded, "We hear you, keep watching, hashtag give divas a chance." Wow. Then that WrestleMania, which is like our Super Bowl, which was our biggest live audience ever, over 101,000 people at AT&T Stadium, we had Hall of Famer Lita go out and announce the rebranding of the Divas division to the women's division.
No,
she unveiled a new championship belt, which was more akin to the men's, but still feminine.
Yeah.
And announced that we'd be rebranding our women. We're now going to be called superstars, same as the men.
Wow.
And since that time, our women have been more regularly main eventing television and pay-per-view events. And this is an awesome story.
Wow.
Just this past, well, and then, you know, of course, we signed Ronda Rousey, one of the world's greatest athletes.
Yep, that's
you know,
right.
I mean, because of all of this,
Yes.
right? And she then now wants to take it to another level.
That's so good.
It is.
Yeah.
It's awesome, and I can't wait to see what we're gonna do
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
You know, but when I say together, I mean with the audience.
I know. It
Because they are so much a part of making that happen. They are just as invested in the women's evolution, if not more so than anybody else.
Wow.
It's something they believe in.
Yeah.
And our women they are rising to the top. You know, they're just being given an opportunity, but they're then taking that opportunity and a lot of the time stealing the show. My husband also, it was a lot of what he started to do at NXT. Which NXT, for those of you who don't know, started off as our developmental show and is now really evolved into a third global touring brand in and of itself, and is one of the most watched programs on WWE Network, which is our OTT service. But my husband started recruiting elite athletes, men and women. And he started training the women same as the men and giving them the same opportunities because, like anything else, repetitions are how you're going to get better, right? So at our live events that we do, our local live events, which is where our talent often, non-televised, where our talent often learn, you know, the skills. That's where they hone the craft. The live audience gives reaction. That's how you learn what's working, what's not working, and worse, what they don't care about.
Right.
Yeah, that's
The silence.
Silence.
Right.
Crickets are
You don't want
bad.
that, right?
I hate those crickets. But so he started giving them those opportunities, and then our audience responded in kind because these women were so awesome, and they started chanting, "This is wrestling and women's wrestling."
Wow, what a cool movement.
Right? And I get goosebumps talking about it. So then so here's this huge movement happening in NXT. So then when that 30-second match happened on Raw, our fans were like, no, we see what can happen and we want that.
Whoa.
We want that opportunity for these women, men and women. And they started that hashtag. So now my story, in December, for the first time ever, our women competed in Abu Dhabi. We're allowed to compete in Abu Dhabi.
I saw that. Okay.
And they had to wear different gear because they had to cover a lot of their skin, and that's totally fine. Actually, their gear was so cool. And the audience started to chant, "This is hope."
Oh my goodness.
This is hope. Men and women in Abu Dhabi. Wow. And then Sasha Banks, who was wrestling Alexa Bliss at that time, said she saw tears in the eyes of little girls in the audience. I mean, can you imagine that?
No, that's transformative.
It's transformative.
Wow.
It really is.
Oh my gosh.
The kind of impact that can have.
I didn't know that.
You know?
I did not know that. I knew that the event happened, but I didn't know that to that extent that it changed things. My gosh, like, what's it like for you? I mean, this is having a real impact on culture.
Yep.
Right? I mean, and by the way, great companies listen to what the market's telling them, and so
great companies listen to their fans.
Their fans, right?
Or their consumers, or what have you.
And most don't, and so kudos to you guys for responding too, and then to know that it's making that kind of transformation worldwide. That's just incredible. Those of you ladies out there, that whether you're Stephanie or you're Ronda Rousey or you're the Divas or you're a woman who's got a bakery in your town, just know that you really do make a difference. You are transformative. You're more of a hero and a role model than you realize. For the girls who come in there and see you, they see people like them winning, and they know that they can then go do it. And so
I'll tell you one other quick sidebar on that, because when my oldest daughter was 2, so this is 9 years ago.
Okay.
I went to the 2's class party, right?
Yeah.
And it was right around the time we were getting ready for Halloween. And one of the other moms, who was about 10 years older, she asked, oh, well, what's your daughter going to be? And I said, oh, she's going to be a doctor. And this other mom said, oh, how interesting that she's going to be a doctor and not a nurse. And I thought, oh, how interesting that you would even say that.
Hello.
Right? Like, it was so surprising to me. But then I thought about it, and my oldest daughter's doctors had always been women.
That's interesting.
So that was her perspective, and that's exactly the point.
Yep, it is.
It is so important for women to be in these roles.
Yeah, it is.
For girls to see that.
And for you ladies that watch this too, to know, like, that metaphor applies to you. Like, you do really give hope. I mean, that's a big scale when you're hearing about them abroad, and that the women are still wearing their different traditional garb, but to be able to create hope like that. But you do that in your way, you businesswomen. When you get up and speak, or you walk into a business meeting, it's transformed the globe the last few years. And so I hope you're proud of that, and I hope you hold on to that, even in the times where maybe the money's not coming in like you'd like it to, and people are telling you to go back where you belong, go back and get a job, or go back to just doing what you were doing before. I want to encourage you to remember, you're giving more people hope than you realize. Just your effort gives people hope. And so for you, I'm curious what it's like.
Here it comes.
Well, you play a character that's like totally believable to me. So that's what's a little bit, what's like really weird about today for me.
Doing my job
I meet you, I'm like, man, I love her. She's like a great mom, unbelievable businesswoman, but I'm seeing this other person on TV forever, right? So what's it like for you to be like this great mom, businesswoman, even though you won't accept any of the praise?
I'd like to believe I'm a great mom.
From everyone else says you are, and I know you wouldn't say it about yourself, and we're going to talk about how you balance that in a second too, by the way, but what's it like playing a character that's kind of like a villain all the time?
Kind of?
Yeah, well, it is. She is a villain, right?
I mean, our audience wanted me to be a villain from day one.
They did.
They did not like the super sweet, vanilla, little daddy's girl. It never worked.
Is it weird for you to do that? Or
no, it's so much fun. I love being the heel. I love it. I love interacting with our audience and them getting me and me getting them. I mean, that's what it's all about, you know? And, to me, it's way more interesting and fun to be the bad guy.
Does it change your energy? I'm just curious, because I don't get to ever do that. Is your energy change, like when you're done? Are you still like kind of that person for an hour afterwards,
or
like you're just done?
No, okay. I can go in and out.
You can?
Yeah, well, I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
A really long time. But basically, unfortunately, there's a lot of stereotypes in this world, right? I just play in to the stereotype. Right. That's all I do.
Right.
Right? And have fun.
Yes.
I mean, and that's when I think we're at our best in our business. So we're having fun, because our audience can feel it. When you talk about the energy, there is no greater energy on earth than interacting with a live crowd of hundreds of thousands of people. Like, it is.
That's just got to be a rush.
It is amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
People ask me all the time. I love doing the podcast, but it's not the same as when I get to speak in front of 30 or 40,000 people.
Because that you feel it.
One thing about your character, I just want to say everybody too about WWE, that they do sometimes, and this is a positive thing that you wouldn't notice about the company that I like. You do play into stereotypes. And sometimes when those stereotypes are magnified like that, it actually takes away its power in society to be validated. Does that make any sense to you?
And also because this is one of the things I do love about playing the bad guy too. Ultimately, I will always get beat.
Right, you do.
Right?
So speak of that, you just did this match that you just did this thing with your husband.
Yes.
And so your tag team deal with your husband and Rhonda, and there was like a message attached to that. Right, and Kurt, and there was a message attached to that whole kind of story behind that too. Can you tell them about that?
Yes. Oh gosh,
this
the whole storyline. So, first and foremost, it was such an honor and a privilege to be a part of. My husband is arguably one of the greatest of all time. He's Triple H, right? And to actually team with him in such a high-profile match. I mean, this was WrestleMania. It's the first time I ever competed at WrestleMania.
I didn't know that.
Yep, WrestleMania is the event my father created and mortgaged everything he owned and my mom owned to make it happen. WrestleMania 1.
Was that a turning point in the company, by the way?
Absolutely. And it was available on closed circuit television, which ultimately pioneered the whole pay-per-view industry.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And then we were one of the first to launch our OTT direct-to-consumer platform behind Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah.
So really, my father really is a visionary, and in terms of entrepreneurship, his message is always to take risks, but take calculated risks.
Yeah. If you paid attention, WWE, the McMahons, is one of the great American business stories of the last 2 or 3 decades in our country is this family's business. As an absolute fact, it's one of the great American business stories. But then the daughter comes along and did modernize and evolve the company as well, even though you won't take the credit for it. So I'm just going to say it. She won't respond to it. That's an absolute freaking fact. Even the platform you're watching this on right now, they're embracing by being here today.
So I take direction well, okay? And, you know, my father really saw social media because he, back in his day, when he first started promoting, actually my grandfather never wanted my dad to be in the business. And when you talk about growing, right, my dad grew up in a trailer park. And
Wow.
yeah, and he didn't meet my grandfather until he was about 13.
I saw that.
But you know, to go from a trailer where they didn't have any running water. My dad said the outhouse, he doesn't know if it was worse in the summer or the winter. So you let your imagination go wild on that one.
Oh my God.
But and then to become who he
Unreal.
Who he is,
Yeah.
you know, and what he built.
It's one of the great American
with passion and believing in yourself and surrounding yourself with great people and not being afraid to take calculated risks and staying true to who you are, all of those elements, right? And building that culture. But so my grandfather didn't want him to ever be a part of the business. And then finally one day he said, you know what, I tell you what, if you can promote Bangor, Maine and make that a success, then I'll let you in the door. So my dad took over Bangor, Maine, and he made it a success.
What a unique
right?
man.
But so that local promotion, that grassroots promotion, that's what social media is. It's directed. Consumer, and he saw that before anybody else. And at that time, I was running digital, and I had gone out to a conference and I had listened to someone, I wish I could remember who it was, but he said, you know, social media, the speaker, he said social media is not 100% of one person's job. It's 1% of everybody's job. So I brought that to my dad, and he goes, no. He said, it's 100% of 100%. And then he issued throughout the company, every single department had to every week give a report to Vince specifically, to the chairman and CEO about what they did on social media to promote their line of business.
Okay.
And it was met with great resistance because people didn't know the platform or they didn't want to do a report. I mean, who wants to do a report? You feel like you're in school. But the chairman asked for it, so we're all going to do it. And thank God we did. You know?
I relate to that in my own company. So your dad did have the vision.
He did.
And then you continue to take it to, I'm just going to give you some credit. Just so
well, I appreciate it, but yeah.
You take it to the next level. But by the way, it's such an inspiring story to me. And then what the company's done with all of it's good, we're going to get into in a second, but I'm not letting you get out of here without
telling me this Rhonda story. Okay, great. So now here's the Rhonda story. So, you know, we've had our eye on Rhonda forever. And Rhonda's a huge WWE fan. And it goes back to also, well, she's been a fan all of her life, but WrestleMania 31, when we were at Levi's Stadium. stadium.
Okay.
And my character goes out with my husband, Triple H, and we're, of course, gloating and taking credit for all of the success of WWE when, surprise, surprise, The Rock's music hits. And he comes down to the ring, and we kind of get into it. Yeah. He and my husband have a little tit for tat, and then I get into it, and I slap Rock as hard as I possibly can. It's actually the hardest I've ever slapped anybody. My adrenaline just must have been through the roof. I didn't mean to slap him so hard, but it was a good one. And then he turned and he looked at me, and I said, "What are you going to do, Rock? You're not going to hit a woman." And I said, go ahead, DJ, get to step in. You know, like, so evil.
You go right into this
so
person
evil.
again, by the way. She just changed in front of me.
Fun. Okay. But it's so evil, right? And then, what does he do? He goes, well, you know what, Steph, you're right. I would never hit a woman, but I know somebody who would.
Oh, that's so good.
And then he gets out of the ring, and who's sitting front row but Ronda Rousey?
That's badass right there.
And then the whole crowd, 76,000 people, start chanting, Ronda's gonna kill you. That was the chant. Like so as she's getting into the ring, and it played out perfectly. Wound out with her like hip tossing my husband and then putting me in the armbar, but I get away and they have their great moment, right? So now we're really actively watching Ronda.
Okay. And
we had been for a long time anyway, but you know, could it ever work? Would it ever work? We would each have conversations. She wanted to, you know, but how is it going to fit in with her fighting and, you know, and her movie career and all that great stuff? And then finally, for whatever reason, the stars aligned. The opportunity was there.
So good.
And my husband was really the one who made it happen. And Ronda signs with WWE. You know, it was